Cali X Boxing here. It is, what is it, Monday? Yeah, it's Monday. Yesterday threw me off because we went live on a Sunday. D-Style has some stuff going on today, so he wanted to go live on Sunday instead. So I'm riding solo on this Monday, and I will be joined shortly with my guy, Chauncey Pearls, by the way. Y'all make sure to hit that like button as y'all come in. Hit the like. Ngannou won. LFG. You're going to get a lot of that, by the way. Shout out to Demetrio. And like I said, I'll be joined shortly with Chauncey Pearls because Chauncey actually has a differing opinion from me. I think, anyway. I haven't heard it out, but he was texting me Saturday how this is a good thing for boxing and Ngannou, or he has a different opinion on it. I'll just let him give his opinion on it whenever it's time to discuss that, because I like to let smart people who differ from me maybe change my mind on stuff. So yes, it is Halloween. Shout out Wheelchair Man John tomorrow. So I may not be live tomorrow. So I wanted to do my Halloween costume today on Monday. And right here, I am Colorado Buffaloes Coach Prime shirt. Look at that. Coach Prime hat, Coach Prime glasses, Coach Prime chains that I wear anyway, Coach Prime, all the gold, all the gold. I am ready, Coach Primed out. I'm ready for Halloween. Before I bring on Chauncey, I see you there, Chauncey. I'll bring you on in a minute. And I'll give him a chance to discuss this as well if he saw the fight. I know he was busy Saturday doing his DJ thing. But Shockey Foster versus Eduardo Hernandez, to me, represents, and I talked about this. I talked about this last week during the week. There's a reason that I didn't do a lead up to Fury versus Ngannou, because I felt like it was a circus act. And that's one thing I was wrong about, by the way, that I didn't think it would be a competitive fight. And it was. It was. I was wrong about that. I'll be transparent. And nobody really did thought it was going to be that way. But it was. But I didn't do a lead up to that fight because, to me, as a hardcore boxing fan, I was just dismissive of it. And I felt like, you want to try to lead by example and be about what you talk about. So if people want more 50-50 fights in boxing, if people want more title fights, if they want fighters behaving like fighters, if they want to bring back the HBO Boxing After Dark type fights, those type of feels, the showbox type feels that have just disappeared in boxing, then we need to be talking about Shockey Foster versus Eduardo Hernandez. We need to be leading into that and saying, you know what, Shockey Foster, he's doing everything right. What does Shockey Foster do? He loses a fight in 2016. He's forgotten about it. He puts his head down. He gets it out the mud, and he says, 9 straight wins. I'm going to get 9 straight wins. He gets 9 straight wins, quietly does it, works his way up the rankings, quietly gets his shot against Ray Vargas. He's the underdog in the fight. He wins the fight, and he leverages that into hopefully a unification fight. Then he doesn't get that, and what's he do? He doesn't whine about it. He doesn't complain about it. What's he do instead? I'm going to go fight the Mexican puncher in Mexico. Did y'all see this on Saturday? I know we have hardcore boxing fans here. You had to have seen the fight. 14-foot ring. Did you see the little matchbox they were fighting? Did you see that one of the judges had Rocky Hernandez winning every single round? Every round. Every round. So the deck was stacked against the champion who actually earned his title, unlike a Rolly Romero. He went out and earned his title. He got it the tough way. He got it the honest way. And then he leverages that into a fight in which he has to go over to Mexico and fight his contender in a close to 50-50 fight. And he has to do it in a matchbox little ring. And he has to do it with one judge, obviously, on the take. That is corruption. That is not just this guy thinks Rocky Hernandez style won out all 12 rounds. No, that's not what that is. He was on the take. Let's call it what it is. We need to do better at calling what it is. What it is. That was a judge on the take. And what does Shockey Foster do? Once again, doesn't complain. He lets his hands go. I'm sure he knew I'm probably down on the scorecards here. This is too sketchy. I got to go and do something that's out of my nature. I have a less than 50% KO percentage. 11 KOs, right around 50%, about 22 fights, right? 50% KO percentage. But I have to let my hands go here. I understand that this is the least likely scenario to play out according to betting odds is me winning by stoppage, me winning by knockout, but I got to go for it. I got to go for it. He lets his hands go and he does something that is so, this, fellas, I need y'all to understand this. This doesn't happen. In the thousands of title fights that have been throughout boxing history, Steve Farhood was talking about this on Twitter earlier. It's only happened 14 times. This is only the 14th time it's happened where a guy was down on the scorecards going into the 12th round in a title fight, and he won by stoppage. And it was O'Shake Foster who did it. It's the theater of unexpected, because if anybody thought coming in that a late stoppage was in play, it was going to be Rocky Hernandez to do it. Shaq Foster ends up being the one to do it. Why did I fall in love with boxing from the beginning? It wasn't because of the big pay-per-views. It wasn't because of the big events. It wasn't because of Mike Tyson, although I was exposed to all of that. And I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed the late 80s, early 90s cards, sitting next to my uncle and his friends, watching the big events, the pay-per-view events. I enjoyed it as a kid. But you know what got me into boxing was the HBO Boxing After Dark cards. It was Arturo Gatti down on the cards and coming back against all odds and winning a fight. It's a guy who's relatable, vulnerable. You know, it's the lower weight class fights where they're throwing a million punches and we get combat, right? Like combat. And it's not all flash, it's substance. And we're just going to put on good cards and see where it takes us. Arturo Gatti was not supposed to be Arturo Gatti. He was just a dude fighting on undercards. And then he wins, and then he wins, and then he wins, and then he loses some, but it's the fact that he's in these fights and he's giving us entertaining fights. And what Shaq Foster gave us on Saturday night, Rocky Hernandez too, is they gave us that feel. They gave us the feel of a lot of hardcore boxing fans fell in love with the sport for a particular reason. It's certain fights gave us feels. And then these fights built stars. The fights built stars. And now we've gotten away from that. We've gotten away from organically building things and we've gotten to artificially building things. No. My fighter doesn't have to fight top 10 guys, and you're going to put him in the top 10 pound for pound list. Why? Because I said so. No, I'm going to go and fight the only calendar year this year, my only fight being a guy who's 0-0, and you're just going to deal with it. And boxing fans just take it. But hardcore boxing fans fell in love with this sport mostly for a reason. It's because of fights, certain fights that delivered, certain fighters who behaved like fighters consistently. And we talk about this ad nauseum on this channel, how it's shocking that you wouldn't think early on that a certain fighter would end up being who he is. Carl Froch winning upset. We talked about Carl Froch, his 12-fight run to end his career. He was the underdog in 8 of those fights, and yet he won 10 out of his last 12 fights. If you simply just put on fights, people will shock you. When people do these mythical matchups, it's already confusing. But now people are doing mythical matchups between fighters in the same era, in the same weight class. And we're saying no. People still do these mythical matchups between top super middleweights of different eras and say Carl Froch loses that. And I'm saying, did you not learn anything from his career? Did you not learn that Carl Froch and his old aura does not pay attention to betting odds and mythical matchups? If you simply put on the fights, you will be surprised. And you'll be surprised at how many times you get surprised. Nobody would have expected Shaq Foster wins by 12th round knockout in this fight, down on the scorecards. Nobody expected that. And that's why we fall in love with the sport. And if we want more of that, then maybe we should be rewarding that. Maybe we should be doing lead-ups to that. I didn't see, like 99% of the content creators out there, I didn't see talk about Shaq Foster at all on Fight Week. At all. No lead-ups, no previews, no prediction videos for Shaq Foster versus Eduardo Hernandez. What the hell are we doing here? What are we doing here? Fury versus Ngannou, they were all over the place. What are we doing here? Did anybody else? Am I the only one that fell in love with boxing because of the fights? Am I the only one? I'm confused. But it'll shock you what happens when you put on the fights, because now Shock Foster's an intriguing character in boxing, because I would have never thought, we would have never thought that Shock Foster could be a guy that could knock somebody out and be in a firefight. But now here we are. Who knows? What happens if we put Foster versus Cordina on? Who knows? Who knows how that plays out? But if it was up to the guys running boxing, if it was up to a growing number of fans out there, we would never find out. We would never find out. Keep the fights on paper, right? Keep them on paper. Less fights like this. More fights like Fury versus Ngannou. So what happened on Saturday for me personally is I'm watching Fury versus Ngannou. Let me text Chauncey. I'm watching this, and it's just like you're at ground zero and the buildings fall off. And that stench on you is going to be there for a while, right? But you walk away from the buildings, you walk away from the scene of the crime, and you maybe see some blue skies in the distance. And that's what I noticed when I watched Saturday night, just watching Shock Foster versus Eduardo Hernandez, as I see that ray of light in the distance and say, I know I'm not naive. I know I'm not getting a great reset. That is ridiculous. Like, it's just ridiculous. And shout out to D Style and B, but they're just like, this is not happening. I'm trying to tell them there is not going to be a great reset. It's not happening. It's just never going to happen. But you don't need it. You don't need it. If we just tackle a couple issues, just a couple, we can get more Shock Fosters versus Eduardo Hernandez's. And it's still worth sticking around to watch this beautiful sport, this beautiful art form that Foster versus Hernandez showed us on Saturday night. And what did they show us? Put on a close to 50-50 fight with differing styles. And the beautiful part about this, and Chauncey, I'm about to bring you on in a minute, but I want to highlight this, is we said whose style is going to win out? Is it going to be the jab of Shocky Foster, or is it going to be the Rock'em Sock'em robots, or the beautiful violence of Rocky Hernandez getting on the inside and making this a high stakes, high output fight? And Rocky Hernandez's style convincingly wins out. And part of the reason when it wins out is they stack the deck for Rocky Hernandez with 14-foot ring. One of the judges giving him every round against all odds. So Rocky's style wins out, but Shock still wins the fight. And it just goes to show you how crazy and beautiful this sport can be. And that's what I saw Saturday night. That reeled me back in, and it gave me back hope that, yeah, I understand we'll always be a niche sport at this point. I'm not naive to think we put this back on network TV. I used to say stuff like this 12, 13 years ago on here. We just get this thing back on network TV. We can become a major sport again. It's not happening. And we're not getting a great reset. But we don't have to, fellas, to still get stuff like this. If we still get fights like this, it's worth sticking around, even with all the corruption in the sport. Let me bring on Chauncey real quick. Let me see. Let me get you up, Chauncey. Hold on one second. Pause, by the way.
There
good. He is.
Yeah, was good. Can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. You're good. And I was texting. We were texting back and forth during the fight. Fury versus Ngannou. And I know you had differing opinion from me on Fury versus Ngannou, but just go ahead and let me know what you saw, what you think about this fight, and what you think about just this whole thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Dan, you're going full on John B, huh? With the John B Thunder shades on too.
I'm going. Cool. This is Coach Prime. This is my attempt at Coach Prime, by the way.
For all right. So, yeah, man. All this uproar that I've been hearing from people that Tyson Fury embarrass boxing, and it's an embarrassment, and all this stuff that I've been hearing. And let's just be honest, man. Like, how many times have we, us as fans, and like, even media have criticized Tyson Fury for his past scenarios? What he's done. This guy he's like a pancake. He's flip flopping everywhere. He's tested positive for PEDs. He's been in bathroom stalls doing nose nachos with Oscar De La Hoya. He's he's retiring, and then he comes back, and then this, then that. So let's not pretend that like Tyson Fury has been like a model citizen, like the gold standard for boxing or for a heavyweight champion. Correct. So in my opinion, man, he didn't embarrass boxing, man. He embarrassed himself. He embarrassed his family. Maybe got a little careless in there, whatever. But man, like, people getting upset that, oh, now boxing is gonna take it's a black eye on the sport. Like, I don't think so. And full disclosure, man, I'm a UFC fan. I'm a mixed martial arts fan. I watch everything, PFL, UFC. I've actually been to more UFC cards live than I've been to actual professional boxing matches. So yeah, I don't think, man, that being a UFC fan and being a mixed martial arts fan, I just love combat. I don't think that this is going to be a black eye, as I mentioned. Yeah, man. I just, what do you think, man? You think that this is going to like, why the uproar about this? Like, Tyson Fury freaking got careless. He got caught. He thought this was going to be a tune-up, and he got tuned up in the third round, and that's that, man. And if there is a division in boxing that across somebody that can cross over and be successful, I think it's the heavyweight division because of the power, the size, the tempo in heavyweight boxing is slower, obviously. So, I mean, I don't understand the uproar, man. Like, whatever. And another thing, Tyson Fury. If there is someone that I'm glad that this happened to, it's Tyson Fury. That is what he freaking gets. That's what he gets, man. My grandma used to say something back in the days, man, to us, like, pa que se le quite, which means that so you could learn your lesson. That's what he freaking gets. He could have had the unification fight with Usyk. Instead, he wanted to go out there. He wanted to fuck around. He found out.
Yeah, so, and you're right. If there's somebody I wanted this to happen to, and that's what I told D-Style yesterday, and I don't think he understood what I was saying. It's not that I wanted to see a boxer go in there and lose to a UFC fighter, because I don't want this stuff at all. I don't like these crossover fights.
Yeah.
If they're going to do a crossover fight, I've said it many times, I want to see a true crossover fight. I want to see a UFC guy be able to spin kick somebody, a boxer, in the head. That's what I want to see. Like, give me a true crossover fight. I don't want to see a boxer fight a non-boxer in a boxing ring during boxing rules. Like, give me a true entertainment value. And then you're actually not putting as much on the line, because it's if a boxer gets spin kicked to the head and gets knocked out, then okay, like, he's not used to kicks. But a dude who has been fighting he's a UFC fighter, he's a mixed martial artist, and a boxer loses to that guy in a boxing ring with boxing rules, then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
It becomes something else. So let me address a couple of your points. Number one, you said something about the Fury family, and this is the sad thing about the Fury family right now, is they've become a caricature of themselves. Like, it started off with a lot of promise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying like you can't go out there and talk. I actually enjoyed Tyson Fury's trash talk for a long while. I thought he was a great trash talker, like a great, beautiful trash talker, but you have to back it up. It's sort of like we say about the Charlos, right? Like, it's funny showing up in the tunnels and approaching people and starting fights at other people's fights when you're actually fighting and when you're actually competitive. But when you go on a 2-year break and you're showing up at tunnels and you're getting slapped up by other fighters, and then your significant other is fighting another significant other in the part, it's no longer funny. Like, it's sad at that point. And this is where I'm at with the Furies at this point. Is we've detailed this whole what's become a soap opera for the past 9 years, right? There was a lot of promise at the beginning. The entertainment value was great, but it was matched with legacy. And now it's just become more soap opera WWE than actual fighting. You have to fight too. So when I see his dad and his son Tommy Fury is barely beating YouTubers, and he's a
Yeah,
boxer. And his dad is there mooning people at like the press conferences, and he's running at people after fights that are sitting ringside like YouTubers. And then when I see Tyson Fury avert big fights in the division for a while now, at the expense of fighting other fights, at the expense of fighting a trilogy nobody wanted to see,
yeah.
at the expense in his last fight, and at the expense of fighting a guy who was 0-0. And I see something like this happen Saturday, I'm gonna laugh and point. I'm going to laugh and point. Like, I'm sorry. I apologize. I know people are telling me, Calix, you need to pay attention to the macro. The UFC fans are making fun of us right now. You can't get in the weeds and you can't. No, 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 no. No, I think the correct way to handle this is to troll Tyson Fury and
Exactly.
his fringe base of just lunatics, because they're deranged lunatics. They will explain everything away. So before we get even further into that, there's a pathway forward for Tyson Fury still. There's still a crack open in the door. And this is what I want to see Tyson Fury do. And I don't know, you can, I'll let you agree or disagree with this. And this is actually the ray of sunshine for him after what happened Saturday. Is now what's their demand for, Chauncey? There's the more demand for more of these fights, right? And there's
Right.
actually Fury versus Ngannou 2 will be bigger than Fury versus Ngannou. I don't want to hear that, right? But it's the truth. I got to be honest. That's the truth. Is the rematch is bigger than the original. So this is what I want to see Tyson Fury do going forward. Is he's already run the December 23rd undisputed. So I think this is what he can do.
Is that going to
First of
happen
all,
still? Like for sure? Like that's already set in stone.
it's not happening December 23rd. They're
Oh,
saying
geez.
January, February. We'll see. I mean, I think it still will January, February. I think February. But what Fury needs to do going forward, it involves contrition. It involves an apology. It involves to the boxing world in particular, and it involves penance, and it involves self-reflection, right? And we'll see if he has that. We'll see if he has what it takes to sit in a room, look in the mirror, and say, you know what, I've become a caricature of myself. I need to get back to the basics, and I need to apologize, and I need to get back to work. So this is what I want to see him say. I want to see him apologize, and I want to see his legion of hardcore fans on that fringe apologize too for calling him the greatest heavyweight of all time and one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. And I want to see Tyson Fury say, take a page from Canelo Alvarez and say, this is what I'm doing on 2024 in detail, clear and concise. I'm going to fight Alexander Usyk in February, and then I'm going to fight Francis Ngannou in May. And here's what I'm going to do. It has to be clear, concise, and it has to be definitive. He has to say, I'm going to fight Usyk February. And then he has to definitively beat him, Chauncey. There's no forgiveness left.
Yeah, no, yeah.
There can't be any controversy. It can't be a split decision. He's either got to knock him out or win a clear decision, right? And then what he's got to do after that, to where there's no talk about a rematch, and what he's got to do after that and say, a couple months later, I'm going to fight Francis Ngannou, and I'm going to right that wrong. And what he's got to do is knock Ngannou out early in the fight. That's his pathway forward. And that's just the start. He can't just disappear after that. He's got to actually do what he hasn't been doing in the sport his whole career. This guy's only has 6 title fights. He barely has any defenses. His title fights are mostly against 2 guys. So he has to get back right with the boxing world is what he has to do. The good news for him and his fans who love to count his pockets is there's a lot of money in those 2 fights for him. I don't know if you agree with that.
I do, and that is a perfect path in a perfect world. But is Tyson Fury really going to do that? I mean, look at his track record. Is he really going to do those things in order? Is he? I don't think so. And the one person I do feel bad for is Usyk, because even though I say that it's not going to affect boxing, Usyk beats. Let's just say Usyk beats Tyson Fury. To me, just gonna be like, oh, he beat a dude that Francis Ngannou beat.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
That's the
not gonna
problem.
it's not gonna give him like that credibility and that credit that he rightfully deserves two division undisputed. But yeah, man, I don't think that I think that is a great pathway. The Usyk fight, and I would say AJ, man, and then save the Ngannou thing for another time, man. I don't know. You know what? And actually, what I was thinking too is Ngannou did handle himself well in that fight. He did a lot of good things. Looked a little bit green, but he did a few good things. And I was thinking, man, I would actually kind of like to see Wilder and Ngannou. That would be a freaking fireworks a fight. And
Wilder
I think,
wants. They're already talking about that fight. They're
yeah,
talking about it.
and can you imagine what a way to Wilder to redeem himself from those losses, those Tyson Fury losses, coming in, fighting for the honor of boxing, and flatlining Ngannou with that right hand. Yeah, man. But
See, I
I
think this is where we differ. Um, I think this D Style said something yesterday that we're gonna get more of these crossover fights now. I think we
Mhm.
both agree. We both agree on that. D Style also said that Fury has to fight Ngannou next, and you disagree with that, right? And I think that maybe highlights that you don't think this is a big deal.
I don't.
You don't think it's a
I don't, man. I think that like people saying that it's a black guy. Boxing is gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. This is just whatever, a little bit embarrassment on Tyson Fury. Now, if this happened to like a fighter like Canelo, Terrence Crawford, those guys that are dedicated to the sport, that do the right things, they're not pancaking around like Tyson Fury, then that would be a different story. But it's Tyson Fury. Like, what did you guys expect? Like,
see. This is I think this is where I disagree too. Is the heavyweight title
mhm.
and perception's everything, right? Is we know Tyson Fury and how he's become a circus act, right?
Yeah.
We get that. But the outside world, the casual market does not. They do not. They think that this guy is, they believe what they've been told by a lot of boxing journalists that this guy, because he's tall and bigger and can shuffle his feet, that he can beat every great heavyweight before him. That he's
Mhm.
arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's definitely top 10 all time heavyweight list, which is all ridiculous, right? And it's where boxing journalists have failed us because they're just not educating the public. Um, so they don't really know. And this heavyweight title, it's the most prestigious title in sports, right? The baddest man on the planet, the heavyweight title.
Do you think that it still is though?
That
Like truthfully?
and that's where I was about to go to is does it speak to boxing that maybe now the fact that they were willing to put that up the way they did on Saturday, the fact that that was it was sad to watch, right? It was like this title that we see as prestigious that we grew up on is just being mangled, destroyed, raped in the middle of the ring as Shrek walks off of his swampland and drops a deuce in the middle of the ring, right?
Hot
And
steaming one too.
a hot steaming one. And I look at that inside my little boxing bubble and I say, okay. And I'm getting the text from my UFC fan buddies and like they're laughing at boxing and I'm laughing with them. Like I'm not mad at them at all. I'm not fighting that battle. I don't have any battle to fight or war to fight with the UFC guys. The war we need to fight is the one within our own tent.
Exactly.
But I'm watching this and I'm like, does this prestigious title even mean anything anymore? Am I looking at this the wrong way? Should I be looking at it the way you're looking at it and say, look, man, at this point, we have to realize where we are. I talked about this on Twitter earlier. It's like boxing fans are ignoring the flying elephant, the bearded lady over there, the lion devouring the lion tamer right in front of us. They're ignoring all of it. They dressed up for a Broadway show and they showed up to circus act and they failed to acknowledge that maybe you're overdressed. So that's what I'm saying. Like, am I expecting too much of a Broadway show? Should I just come to the conclusion that this is all just a circus act at this point and the casuals may forget about this next week? I don't know. And maybe
They
I'm
are, and that's what I'm saying. That they are gonna, like, we live in these strange times where like the attention span is 3 seconds. Like,
yeah.
yeah, man. Like, I don't know, but boxing's gonna be fine in my opinion.
And
I'm
you're
glad
right
it
about the
happened to.
attention span thing, though, because, when we had Boxing Wave on the show a couple months ago, it was leading up to Spence Crawford and Inoue Fulton. And he said that. He said, I really don't understand this new generation we're in which it doesn't matter what happens this week. People, after, if Inoue beats Fulton, which he ended up doing, like 2 seconds later, they're going to be talking about what Inoue does next. And you saw it. Like two
Yeah.
seconds after, they started to talk about Inoue versus Tank. And then Crawford versus Spence ends. And we all had fun at the expense of the Spence super fans, right? But 2 seconds later, they're talking about Bud versus Canelo. And they're not even like it used to be like weeks after. We're still buzzing about what happened and we're talking about the greatness of the fighter. And we just skip over that part of it. And I think it speaks to a new generation we're in, right? Is everything's moving fast. And Canelo will beat Mel, and then the day later they're talking about him ducking Bud Crawford. I'm like, what the hell happened? Maybe I'm just a boomer, Chauncey. And you know me well. Like, I barely know how to copy and paste, and you're talking about to me about an MP4.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm still lost. I'm still in that previous generation. So maybe you're right. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe I'm reading too much into this by saying this is one of the worst days in the sport's history,
It's
and this is
it's
a
and it,
prestigious title.
and it's not, man. And you know what? There's little things that are happening within the sport that are positive. Like Oshaki Foster, I didn't get to see the fight, but I did see highlights. Amazing. Who would have thought that he would have knocked him out in the 12th round? Amazing. Kind of reminded me of like Chavez and Meldick Taylor when he knocked
Yeah.
him out at the buzzer, and so he amazing, great thing. The card last week I missed too. I've been so busy. Roca versus Santillan.
Yes.
I heard from what I heard, I knew I have some friends that actually went to that card live, and they said it was phenomenal. So those are positive things. The other thing that I would say is that you actually brought it up in your last video was Ryan Garcia saying what he said about pay-per-views
Mm-hmm.
and how he said, "Now I don't want to rob fans." We got to pay attention to that, like you said, because I think that he's turning that corner where he's gonna kind of be like the fighter that gives back to the fans and is doing the right things. And he already has the casual market on lock. Now I think that he's gonna smarten up and he's gonna get the diehards to really start to turn on his side.
Yeah.
And so those little things, man, there's positive things that are happening in the sport. Tyson Fury is just a little black guy on himself, not the sport. And boxing's gonna be fine, man.
So I like this perspective. It's an optimistic perspective. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but you're making me think because I'm talking about this being, and I do believe that. I do believe we have flying elephants around us, like we do, we very much do. This is mostly a circus act, but at the same time, we did have Shock Foster versus Eduardo Hernandez. We
Mm-hmm.
did have Santillan versus Roca. We are still putting together some. I mean, we
We
still
got
have
Anyway coming up, Mr. Tuesday Night, man. Like he's coming up, and
even fights this weekend. You got Cordina, you got Sevenanti Nonshinga, you got Shakur Stevenson coming up against De Los Santos. So you're still getting what I want, and that's why I'm going to stick around. Is I know I can still get things, and I don't need a great reset. I'm not naive enough to think that I can get one. It's not realistic. We are not getting a great reset, but at the same time, the positive is we don't need one. Um, and I also think what I'm hanging on to is I'm not naive to think that we're now not going to get more crossover events because that's what this leads to. What happened Saturday night, and that's why I was frustrated by it. One of the main reasons is now I know Fury versus Ngannou 2 is going to happen. Now I know Wilder's going to want to fight Ngannou. Now I know there's a chance now. I hope it doesn't happen that Canelo fights a Conor McGregor. That Tank, I don't put it past the Tank team at all to fight. God only knows who, O'Malley, whoever. I know those fights are going to happen. But what I'm holding on to is you talked about Ryan Garcia. That you still have fighters that understand that yes, we will fight the big money fights. Yes, I still want those fights, but I still have to mix in the legacy fights.
mm-hmm.
We're not against, like, I'm not against Canelo fighting McGregor in 2026 in an exhibition match. That's not what I'm against. I'm not against all pay-per-views. I'm just against this stuff happening. Why, Fury, why are you putting Undisputed on hold? You have 10 guys lined up to fight you that you can fight you that you haven't fought yet, and you're fighting this fight. That's what I want to see stop happening. And I think the positive here that I'm holding on to is these type of fights are still going to be seldom, hopefully. That, yes, Tank might fight O'Malley, Tank might fight Pacquiao, which is sad, but hopefully they get back to business at some point. People are calling for Canelo versus Bud, but hopefully people understand Canelo versus Benavidez needs to happen, right? The fights that make sense need to happen. And hopefully the ray of light is the Ryan Garcia interviews. The Tim Tszyu saying, we got to get back to weight class business. I want to fight all the comers at 154, and I want to fight them in the big fights in Vegas. I'm willing to go to you. Shock Foster saying, I'm willing to go to Mexico. Yeah. I'm willing to go to the UK. So there are still positives there.
Ryan Garcia doing all those things for Tank to get the Tank fight, even though, you know, people say that wasn't like a big fight, but he did what he had to do to get that fight, man. So like I said, positive. Those are positive things.
Yep. And yes, I think it would be better for all promoters to be on DAZN. I want to see network. That's one of the few things that I think we can actually tackle, right? That's realistic is we're not going to get a great reset. The sad thing about what happened in Saudi on Saturday too, and I don't know if you agree with this, is, man, you're in the music business. You know what it takes to get Kanye and Eminem to fly out there and show up to that event.
Yeah.
Dude, what they paid these guys to go over there, it's artificial and it's going to throw off the market and it's not sustainable. So that's the sad part about it. But one of the realistic things we can get is eventually we may be able to get a consolidation in which more promoters get to less platforms and they're competing to get their cards back on and they're forced to put on good cards. And I don't know if you think that's a realistic thing. And if you want to give your final thoughts before I let you go, you're probably busy.
Yeah, no, man. That would be in a perfect world, you know, have all the promoters under one banner. Again, is that going to happen? Probably not. I don't even know what's happening. What's happening with PBC? Are they signing away with DAZN or
don't know?
Amazon Prime? Nobody knows yet.
Nobody knows. Jesus. And they have dates on hold in Vegas in February. The PBC, and they're starting to throw around DAZN fighters for possible Canelo's fight in May. So that tells me that DAZN's possible. Or maybe Amazon is a move. I don't know, but nobody knows at this point. But they gotta come up with something quick because we're going into November.
So final thoughts, man. Again, boxing's gonna be fine. And I wanted just to say that because, like as mentioned, I'm a big mixed martial arts fan. I watch collegiate wrestling, everything. There definitely going to be like UFC and MMA fans that are freaking nuts, crazy, dude, talking all this crap, whatever. But
I'm not even bothered by them though. Like they won Saturday.
Yeah, but there is also UFC fans that are educated and they understand the sport, they understand boxing. So boxing's gonna be fine, man. Tyson Fury shit the bed. That's what he gets. I'm not freaking mad at it. I'm actually that's what he gets. I'm happy. Good.
Let me ask you this too, as somebody who watches the UFC, were you impressed? Like, this is the first crossover event where I saw I saw Chavez Jr. versus Anderson Silva, but it was clear Chavez Jr. just wasn't taking it seriously, and maybe Tyson Fury wasn't either. But Tyson Fury is at a different level of his career than a Chavez Jr. was at that point. But what I was impressed with Ngannou is this is the first time I saw a UFC guy with boxing principles, correct footwork, and it was clear early on. And you started texting me this. He's not carrying him. He's not. It was clear.
He wasn't. No.
And Ngannou is pot-shotting him. He's countering him. And when Fury landed that first big right hand in the first round, Fury almost had a look on his face that I expected you to go down from that. And maybe now I'm in a fight. How impressed were you with Ngannou's footwork? And do you think because I have the UFC fans tell me this all the time that UFC fighters are evolving
They are.
into actual legit strikers and stand up guys. And there's a reason that they want these guys to stand up more is because it's more entertaining than the George St. Pierre's of the world who just lay on you.
Yeah.
So are we going to see more guys like that who are able to make this transition?
Um, I'm not sure, but I have to give his coaches a lot of credit. Dewey Cooper and the other homie. They've been working with Francis diligently and getting footwork, skills, whatever. But Francis Ngannou was a boxer. He started boxing in the beginning. I don't. He wasn't like a amateur. He had like a good amateur background, but his first discipline was boxing. He looked okay, man. As mentioned, I feel that the heavyweight division, if they're going to have successful transitions or crossover fights, I think it's going to be in the heavyweight division. But I was impressed with Ngannou. He had Tyson Fury on the back foot. He was pushing him back.
Yeah.
And again, and even when Tyson Fury tried to grab, man, Ngannou's a big dude. He just was not able to ragdoll him around or anything like that because, of course, the wrestling base that he had from his training in MMA. But I want to see Ngannou fight again, man, in boxing. I'd like to see him fight like
Oh, he will.
like
He will.
yeah, like a Joy Joyce or something like that, or someone someone a little a lower level, maybe not a title shot yet. But I want to see him fight, man. Like give him the opportunity, man. Like whatever.
He
But as
earned
far
that. He earned that Saturday.
he earned it. He earned it, man. So yeah, man, it's gonna be all good, man. Everything's gonna work out. But I was gonna ask you too, another positive. I'm getting tickets to that Devin Haney and Regis Prograis fight. Going back to San Francisco, I lived there for many years, and I haven't been to the Chase Center yet, so I'm excited to go check it out. Make the flight, man. Come out. Let's watch the fight.
You trying to get me divorced?
Bring your girl. Bring your girl. I'll bring my wife. Bring your wife, man. And yeah, I'm actually gonna be going with my nephew, my cousin, and my brother. And yeah, we're gonna go check out the fight. It's a 6-hour drive from here.
They
Go on a
put
little road
that,
trip.
and once again, that's another because we talked about how that's not a pay per view in the negative, right?
No,
But the positive is
it's a unification.
despite what people say about Haney, I know there's some negatives there, but he's moving up a weight class and fighting a legit title holder who has been the top two guy in that weight class for 5-6 years. And I know it's an opportunistic move because they saw the Zorilla fight. I mean, I get that, but it's still danger involved. And that could turn into a nightmare of a fight for him if Prograis has more in the tank than he showed in the Zorilla fight.
Yeah, man, and I don't know.
Prograis, like I'm telling you, like people who haven't seen him up close, he is a bottom heavy fighter who generates power from the bottom. And if he lands something on Haney in this fight, and if he cuts off the ring well, like he didn't do against Zorilla, like that was so frustrating to watch because Zorilla's movement to his power hand the whole fight, and Prograis is just not cutting off the ring, man. It was a frustrating performance to watch. But the one thing I know about Prograis is he doesn't do well in his homecoming fights. He does not fight well in New Orleans, and that showed again earlier in the year. So if he is closer to the guy who fought Zepeda, even with the styles, he still looked fresher against Zepeda. I know it's a different style. Haney could be in for a rough night, and this is Haney behaving like a fighter. This is a legit title fight against two talented fighters, and the fight is where it belongs. That's another thing. Put the fights where they belong, and you'll be able to go with family members. You're not priced out. Right?
Yeah, I think we got we're gonna get some decent stuff like 240 a ticket, but they're lower level, which is not too bad.
And that's everything now. I mean, I'm pricing Pelicans tickets right now and Saints tickets. Everything is $200-$300 now.
Jeez, yeah.
So that's not out the norm from what we're seeing. And that's the type of fight when you put it in the place it belongs, that you'll see grandkids there with their grandads, right? And that's exactly what you want to see more of. So it's positive. We've talked about the negatives of that fight, but that's the positive. And Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows? Maybe I'll take a flight. Who knows? We'll
Well,
see.
come on, man, just do it. You'll be all right. You're gonna be all right,
Just
man.
do it. Famous last words. Just do it. It'll be
Yeah,
fine.
you're gonna be
It's
fine,
gonna be
bro.
fine.
Like
And you're
it's not.
you're an eternal. I can tell you're an eternal optimist here too, because you're like, yeah, boxing will be fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
just do it.
yeah,
Just take the flight.
yeah. I mean, what the heck, dude? Like, come on, man. It's gonna be fine, man.
Am I? Well,
Jesus.
let me tell you that. Let me ask you this: will I be fine in the Bay if I show up with Prograis gear on? Like, will I be
You'll be
okay?
fine, man. You're gonna be with me, man. I have family out there. You're gonna be just fine, man.
All right, we're
Yeah,
good then.
you're gonna be. It's gonna be New Orleans versus San Francisco. Gonna be good. Yeah, man. You should be good.
All right.
It's gonna
Well,
be fine.
I appreciate you swinging through
All right, brother, man.
with the
Take
positive
care.
take.
Take care, man.
Later.
Peace.
That's Chauncey P. Chauncey P, the creator. I appreciate him rolling through. And he was texting me and he was like, man, I think y'all are reading this wrong. He's texting me during the fight and he's texting me after the fight as he's watching D Style stream. And he's like, I think y'all are reading too much into this. And where I don't necessarily agree with him, I think a lot needs to be read into this. And this is bad for boxing. It's a black eye, not just for Tyson Fury, but for boxing and for boxing's fans. Is there still is, although there's not the same prestige behind the heavyweight title, and what comes with it doesn't come with what used to come with it, right? And it's evident because Tyson Fury is not getting the same endorsements that fighters, heavyweight champions of previous generations used to get, right? And it's not good to see a dude come from another sport and beat the guy who is recognized as the guy. He's not recognized as pound for pound, but I'm told all the time is pound for pound is lesser than the heavyweight champion. The heavyweight champion can still beat anybody. He can beat anybody. He's the heavyweight champion. He's the baddest man on the planet. So when the baddest man on the planet is the guy who is perceived to be the baddest man on the planet, fights a guy who is 0-0, and that guy arguably beats him. And it's getting so bad out here, fellas, with the cope of the boxing fans, that they're out there screenshotting the rules, the criteria for scoring a boxing match in their arguments against UFC fans. Like, no, you're scoring the boxing match wrong. It's like, dude, when you get to that point, you've already lost the argument. You've lost. The fact that you even have to bring out that screenshot tells us the fact that this even got into the middle rounds the way it did. The fact that it got to the scorecards is already a loss. It's a loss. You're not understanding. And I appreciate Chauncey's optimism and I take it into account. And I'd say some of his points are really good and solid. And he might be right. We may be in a different generation that I'm not recognizing, that we're going to be fine. People are going to move on from this pretty quick. Everything's going to move back. We're going to get Fury versus Usyk and Undisputed. Everything's going to move on fine. But I can't be that optimistic. I just can't. I think this is a black eye. I think that Tyson Fury brought us to a place that we shouldn't have been to begin with. And my fear is we're going to be at that place a lot going forward. We're going to get a lot of crossover matches. And once again, we're losing by even doing this. The fact that fighters are out here feeling like they have to be Captain Save-A-Ho to save boxing from the UFC guys. And we need a first round knockout. We need a body. We need a body now because this guy got in there and stuck up the joint. That's the sad part about this to me. And it speaks to where we're at in boxing. If you were to cook up like the perfect ingredients as to why boxing is where it is now and how sad it is and how its stock has gone down in America over the generations, if you were to cook up that perfect meal, it's Fury versus Ngannou on Saturday. That's what I think. And some people may be taking it lightly and saying, oh, just, it's a circus act. It's a one-off. I understand we're getting Shock versus Hernandez and we got Santillan versus Roca. And I appreciate that I'm still getting some of those fights despite this stuff. But I'm telling you, it's something we need to pay attention to here. Lots of gatekeeping in boxing. Sly Tendency 87, $5 super chat. I appreciate this. Boxing fans are a lot like the old Chinese dojos who would attack anyone who taught or shared their style. Yeah, I'll tell you another thing, Sly Tendencies, is this is something we need to get away from as well, and something we need to get better at and recognize that we do, is we have a complex as boxing fans that we can talk bad about the ills of boxing, but outsiders cannot do it. Don't come in here and talk about how bad boxing is. And that's a different approach that I've taken. I have no war. I have no beef with the UFC guys. I sit down with them at their events, at their fight parties, and I just sit back and observe and watch. They're happy. And I admire that. They're not out there talking about a record. They're not out there talking about an O. They're not out there talking about purse splits. I've never heard a UFC guy talk about a purse split, ever. I've never heard a UFC guy talk about how much a fighter, a UFC guy, is getting paid during a fight. Never heard it. We can learn a lot from them. And a different approach I took Saturday is I'm not going to beef with those guys. I'm not going to fight with those guys and get in the mud about boxing's better than UFC. What are we even talking about? Boxing's better than UFC at what? At what? We're talking about two different sports. At a street fight, at a club, all right, let's figure it out there if y'all want to do that. But boxing versus UFC in a boxing match, it's a no-brainer. Saturday night, we almost slipped up and lost to the UFC guy. But I'm not going to get in the mud and fight with those guys over boxing versus UFC because it's a meaningless battle to me. And every empire is destroyed from within. I recognize that. So UFC is not going to come in here and terminate boxing. Boxing is an art form that will always be around. But the reason the stock has fallen, the reason that, as Chauncey says, and we discussed, that the heavyweight title doesn't have the same prestige as it once did, is because of what we did to it. And Saturday is a microcosm of that. A guy who is seen as the baddest man on the planet, whether we believe that or not, seen as the heavyweight champion, whether we believe that or not, because that's up for debate as well, because we don't have a guy. That's what Undisputed is for. But that's the perception. That guy went willy-nilly in there on Saturday, took a dump, and allowed that prestigious title, that once prestigious title, to be raped, pillaged, just destroyed in the ring. And to me, that's a microcosm of where we're at, and the power brokers and the top fighters in the sport not taking this thing as seriously as we take it as boxing fans. And you know what? At this point, I'm going to take more of a Chauncey approach. I'm not going to care more about this than the actual fighters and the power brokers do. I'm just not going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enjoy the entertainment. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to support the fighters who need to be supported and deserve my support. And it is what it is. God bless. Y'all have a great Monday. See y'all tomorrow. Peace.